Welcome to Crew Call, the Below the Line podcast by, for, and about the crew. Today's guest is a set lighting technician, Michael Taylor. Mike is also the writer behind the Hollywood Juicer blog. Welcome to Crew Call, Mike.
He makes us some wonderful films. Without him, we wouldn't have the great lighting. He's part of the magic. So let's jump right into this. Just wanted to thank you very much for meeting with us this morning and answering some questions. So can you tell me about your job?
As set lighting technician, we run power to the set if we're on location from a generator. And once we're there, we set up the lights and power them and adjust them accordingly for each shot of each scene in the sequence of work that we'll do that day. Very dynamic job. We're busy all day long.
Can you walk us through a typical day, step by step, of what you do once you get there?
Well, once the director and DP have decided how they want to shoot things, that's the basic problem. Once they've set that, then our work proceeds because we know how to solve the problems at that point. Until they make up their minds, we can't do anything. But they usually come pretty well prepared. Call sheets and rundowns for what we're going to be filming that day. So they'll set up a camera and we'll start lighting accordingly. And then if each shot changes, we'll move the lights to match the lighting to make it work out. And it's just like this. It's all part of this process. The grips and electrics and the camera all working together, one at a time, to make it happen.
Great. Okay, so now, how did you get started?
I studied film in school, not a real film school, but where I got to see a lot of movies and got interested in it, and I came to L.A. A couple of years after school, just to give it a try, to see if I could make something happen here in Hollywood. And I got a job. My first job was an unpaid PA on a micro-budget feature shot in 16mm film. So they couldn't afford to pay me. But after a couple of weeks of driving a 5-ton truck for the set dressing department, they decided they needed an assistant editor. And since I'd made my own little 16mm film in college, I was the likely suspect. So they started paying me $50 a week. You know, I was in post-production then for the rest of that film. But the people I met on that film, I met the gaffer and one of the grips, and they started getting me work further down the line. And that's kind of the way this business works. It's all a matter of meeting people and making relationships and then exploiting them, I guess, or letting them exploit you, I suppose. And in the process, you learn. Like I said, those connections can open the doors for you, but they won't keep them open. If you can't come through, if you can't deliver, then you won't last. And that's one of the good things. I mean, if you have a good attitude, you work hard, you keep your mouth shut, you know, until it's appropriate. People notice. People like that, and they'll help open doors for you.
Now, I have a question for you. A lot of people might not know the difference between a grip and a lighting technician.
The basic sort of the phrase in our business is that the electricians add the light and the grips take it away. And it's this oversimplification, but it's essentially true. We'll put a great big light up, and if it's just blasting on the scene, it just lights up everything. It looks horrible. The grips come in with flags, cutters, these big black pieces of cloth on frames, and they shape the light, you know, according to what the cameraman wants, to take light off the walls, leave light on the actors. Or maybe we'll put another light on the walls that does something else. It's just called an element of controlling the light. But grips, of course, there's dolly grips who do that. Grips, they do all kinds of rigging work. The grips are the ones that will mount a camera on an airplane or a roller coaster or a race car, wherever it's got to go, and make sure it works without falling off and killing somebody.
So you're the person that pretty much gives the direction of what's going to happen, what you need done. They're the people that follow your instruction.
It's kind of it's not that I don't tell the grips what to do. They know what to do, and their key group will tell them what to do if they don't. But we do work kind of it's like an offense-defense kind of thing. We set the lights, then they react. Then go to the next shot. It's always they follow us in that regard, in terms of lighting. They can't set their flags until we set our lights, basically.
What advice do you have for people that are interested in your position?
Well, learning the equipment is probably the hardest part. And that's why I do advise people, if they can, get a job in a rental house. they'll be filling out the orders. They'll learn the terminology. Because there's just a vast terminology of all kinds of stuff that you don't find in the civilian world at all. Unique terminology, which I'm sure is true of every business, but this is our business. You got to learn that stuff, or else you won't have a clue. And once you learn the equipment, what it is, then you can learn how to use it. But it's good to know that stuff, because if we get guys on set who are new, they don't know what the stuff is, you have to explain it. Anytime you explain to them, you can go do the job yourself, and so that person doesn't get called back, you know.
So then the other thing that they have to know, right, would be the difference between a rigging electrician and the lighting technician, correct?
Well, we all kind of go back and forth, but there are people who specialize in rigging, yes, especially on the big shows. They'll have rigging crews, and they'll go out and they'll run all the cable. They'll get everything. They'll over rig it so that, as a good friend of mine is a big time rigging gaffer. I mean, it's Terminator movies and The Lone Ranger, shows like that. And the way he put it to me, he says, my job is to give the cameraman options, so that any direction they want to shoot, they can do it. And that means running literally tons and tons of cable, just so that wherever they are on their location set, they can turn and say, I want to shoot that way, and the power will be there for them.
Now, what are some of the challenges that you face doing your job?
Well, the sitcom world I'm in now is very different than the single camera world. I did 20 years of single camera. And their biggest challenge is getting up at 4 a.m. I hate that. And very long hours, very long days. And, you know, I can't count the times at 3 a.m. on a Saturday morning sitting in an apple box staring at my shoes waiting to get the shot, waiting till they'll finally get to call wrap, because it's just brutal. Those hours on episodics, and even features, but particularly episodics, it's just a meat grinder. And that's for young people. That's why I don't do that stuff anymore. I can't do that stuff anymore. But it's just kind of the waiting, you know, waiting for the other departments to get their stuff together so that you can then do your job. And it's not, like I say, it's not anybody's fault. It's not anything wrong with the system. That's just the way it is. It's a creaky, clanky, clunky machine. And one foot has to go in front of the other, in front of the other, and in front of the other, in front of the other. And if you, so you just have to get used to waiting your turn. And that's part of the discipline, because you have to stay alert and be ready to jump up and instantly do your job. You can't start daydreaming. You can't go off and play Angry Bird, just stare at your cell phone. You have to be there. I mean, a good technique, good grip, good lick, good juicer, good whatever. I mean, they're always present. It's like sitting at a stoplight with the clutch in, ready to go when the light turns green. It's kind of the stance you have to have at all times, and that takes a while to learn that. It really does. It's not easy.
Now, multi-camera. Do you have specific times that you're at the studio? Or?
Well, yeah, every show is different, but my current show, what they call a Wednesday, Thursday show, which means we do our block and shoot day on Wednesday. That's where we pre-shoot scenes that we're not going to shoot in front of the audience, and then we block out, orchestrate the movements of all 4 cameras for every single scene. So that when we do the live audience show the next night, it'll all be done in about 3 or 4 hours. We can run a 22-minute show in that time. With retakes, you obviously do usually at least 2, maybe 3, sometimes 4 retakes. It's weird. We don't come to work the same. I mean, like, in my case, we'll come to work Monday at 2 in the afternoon, and then maybe work 8 hours, maybe not, depending on how much we get done. Going on Tuesday, that's another lighting day, coming at 2 o'clock. On Wednesday, everyone shows up at 8. The camera, sound, everybody, and that's our first block and shoot day, or that is our block and shoot day. And then we just do that. Could be 10 hours, could be 12. It all depends on the show. Sometimes less than that. And then the next day we'll come in maybe 10:30, 11. Again, the entire crew assemble, camera, sound, everybody. And we'll refresh, we'll go back. There'll be some changes the writers have made overnight, maybe a little reblocking here and there, rehearsing. Then we all have a dinner break, and then we come in and the audience loads in and we shoot the show.
What would be a funny story from the past, something that sticks out that you can remember that you can share with us?
Well, in the multicam world, the kind of the most fun happens when you do your rehearsals and maybe an actor flubs a line, and it happens. And sometimes this flub line is go on. Well, sometimes it'll be particularly funny. They'll just run with it, and the other actors will all jump in, and for 2 or 3 minutes they're doing an improv, and the energy suddenly just pegs into the red, and it can be very, very funny, because these are sitcom actors, like all actors, they're professionals. They're really good. They're really funny, witty, quick, sharp people. And when an old spark ignites that fire, it's it's just a ball to watch. There was one incident when we were rehearsing a little cable show a few years ago where family scene, 3 kids, the mom and dad. The eldest boy, a teenage boy, I don't know, in the course of the plot, he'd done something he shouldn't have and was being reprimanded by mom. And her line was something along the lines of, how would you like to be grounded for 2 weeks? But what came out was, how would you like a blowjob? And a brief moment of just disbelief amongst the crew. We're all looking at each other. Then everybody just kind of broke up, and she turned 40 shades of red, and, everybody laughed. It was just one of those bizarre moments. We don't know what was on her mind, and she was,
Yeah, either she had a really good morning or she didn't have a good morning, and that's why it came out.
An actor will do something, intentional or not, that just suddenly kind of makes it all worth it. It just becomes this magical little moment, and I don't know.
And that was filming live, right in front of the audience?
No, that was our block and shoot day. I don't think it would have happened in front of the audience. I don't think so. I think she would have been a little more focused.
Right. All right, so back to you. When did you start your career?
I came to LA in 1977, and was on a wing and a prayer and without a clue. But fortunately, one of the film lecturers at the school that I attended had since moved down to LA and had a job with the local PBS outlet, and they were co-producing this micro-budget feature. And he's the one who gave me the tip to said, hey, they need a PA. So I called them up, and of course they were happy to take somebody on for no money. I mean, it didn't cost them anything. And right away, they took me to a rental yard and said, well, here's a 5-ton truck. Can you drive a 2-speed transmission? Sure, because he always answered yes. And then, of course, the rental guy said, this is how you do it, kid. So I learned the hard way, driving a bigger truck than I'd ever driven before around the streets of L.A. over Laurel Canyon at Christmas time.
Wow.
It was an education, a very rapid education.
Yeah, it does make things easier when you get thrown into the fire at first.
Yeah, you either sink or swim to a certain extent, and as long as you can paddle and keep your head above water and not drown, you're doing okay, because you will get the hang of it. It just takes time.
It's a matter of rolling with it, I think. And like we talked about before, the attitude, if you have a good attitude about it and you humble yourself and you're like, okay, I'm willing to do it. Show me how to do it. I'll do it.
Yeah.
And do your best.
Exactly.
You said you started back in the 70s. What are some things that have changed since the 70s?
Well, of course, I haven't seen a film camera maybe 3-4 years. I mean, I did a day played a week on a show called Criminal Minds 3-4 years ago. And that was the last time I saw film. I mean, we're into doing coverage inside the location, and the assistants are bringing in the mags and snapping them off and doing the changes. And I realized I hadn't seen that for a year, and I haven't seen it since. It's all digital now. I mean, it's just more. It doesn't so much affect our job, my job, other than just kind of the whole rhythm of things. It's different than it used to be. But lighting has changed a lot. The equipment has changed. Like when I came in, the Carbon Arc, the big, like sort of World War II technology, was the big lighting unit that we had, our biggest unit. And then they went to the HMI lights, it's these daylight AC arcs. And now the LEDs are making big inroads in the business. And I mean, I'll be very interested to see what happens with them over the next 10 years or so. I think they're going to take over.
Now, did all of these changes make it faster with production, or is it about the same speed? I mean, because I know that, like you said before, you're waiting for, all other aspects of the filming, the hair, the makeup, the wardrobe department, getting the scenes right and everything like that. But do these lights and this technology speed up the process a little bit?
Some of them do. I mean, we have some little LED lights we're using on this show. We have a lot of LEDs, actually, but most recently, they look kind of like fluorescent tubes. They're the same size as fluorescent tubes, and we can just put those anywhere, and boom, 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 whereas it just used to be much more of a pain to get lights in some of these little nooks and crannies. Sometimes the technology doesn't. I mean, we went from arcs to HMIs. Every arc had to have you had to have an operator. It had to be run. The guy had to stand there and run the darn thing. And so they would size the crews accordingly. We'd have very big crews. Went to HMIs, they said, well, you don't need that operator anymore. So suddenly we had less guys, and the lights were just as big and heavy. So sometimes it cuts both ways, But all in all, it's just you're getting more capability. What the what a good dimmer guy can do with his computer system and the LEDs and moving lights, the kind of things you see on rock and roll shows and all. Or it's like you saw in the Olympics, the opening ceremony, those things, or the Grammys. I mean, you see what they can do. I mean, I kind of call it flash and trash lighting. It's kind of down in theory signifying nothing, you know. I mean, it's a spectacle, but it is amazing what they can do.
Is there anything that, if you were in charge of everything, would there be something that you would change maybe in the way things are done, the order things are done, the equipment?
Well, the thing that's the constant battle now is it's just they're grinding us for the bottom line. The producers are just, now that the business is so corporate. I mean, all the studios are owned by giant corporations now, and these are people that they don't understand the business. They understand how it works. I mean, it isn't really a science what we do. I mean, it's an art in many ways, and the ordinary sort of grid pattern of corporate thinking doesn't apply here. I mean, if it did, they could predict what's going to be hit, what's not going to be hit, and there wouldn't be any mystery to it. But it is. There's some magic to it, and that requires a little bit of slack. And these corporate guys don't understand that. They don't like that. The shareholders can't relate to that. So I would just ask for a little more understanding and not to grind the crew so hard. I mean, people, even now, there's so many different rates of pay. When I got in the union, there was union scale and above. Now there's a whole host of sidebar deals. I mean, I have not gotten full union scale on a job for 2.5 years.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I'm only getting $1 below scale in this job, so it's pretty good, but that's the way it is now. It's like the new reality. It's getting weird, and that situation is going to continue, I think, especially with all this, the production going to so many other states and overseas. I mean, it is kind of this race to the bottom, and I don't know where it's going to end. My one hesitance about recommending this business to young people, as you were asking earlier, is just that I don't see things getting better in that regard in terms of financial end of it. I think really it's just going to get tougher, and like the special effects guys who are picketing the Oscars today, I mean, they're going to go extinct in this country if things don't change. The other thing is that all these cable deals, they don't go to double time and pay until 14 hours worked. And double time to me has never been a way to make money. It's a hammer to keep the producers from abusing you, from making you work more than 12 hours, because it's hard to do. And I mean, I did a few days on a show called Tell Me You Love Me, an HBO show a few years ago. We're out on location. We do 4 locations in a day, starting at 5:30 in the morning, ending at 10 o'clock at night. And I remember hearing the director saying, well, we've got a couple more hours. Let's keep shooting. Because we're past 12, so he could get to go to 14 without paying a big penalty, so why not do it, And that really rubs the below-the-line crew the wrong way, for good reasons, as you can understand.
Yeah, well, yeah, because they're working you harder and not paying you more.
Yeah, you're working harder for less money. For young people, they have the stamina. They can do that, and they can make a lot of money and learn and build their careers that way, and that's okay. But even at a certain point, they too will hit the wall, and you realize you just can't do that anymore. It's just too brutal. The good thing about that is cable's making a lot of shows. They're making a ton of sitcoms, a lot of dramas, episodic comedies. So there's a lot of work happening. So even despite the production drain, the massive production drain, going to Louisiana and New York and other places in the country, there still is a lot of work here. Not a lot of feature films, but there's a lot of TV going on. But
well, that's good at least.
Yeah, that's the silver lining. But the work is hard, and the money's getting less and less. I mean, every time a contract comes up, every 3 years the union contracts come up, we get beaten further down, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. But,
yeah, so either you have to work a whole lot more and do side projects, or you just deal with the less pay scale.
Yeah, I worked more days last year than I ever worked ever in this business. I mean, it's almost 200 days, and I had a pretty good year, but. It's really, if I look back, adjusted for inflation, making like half what I used to make. It's just the new reality.
Well, what would be your final thoughts on all this? Any final words? Anything to say to those people that are interested, that really want to give it a shot, even though we talked about how the pay scale is going down? But anything that you could think of that you might want to give a little bit of tidbit of information.
Yeah, I would say what I would tell them is just be sure this is what you want to do and that you're ready for a life of uncertainty. And if you can accept that, then be patient. Because if you work hard, keep your mouth shut, use your head, good things are going to happen, but they won't happen overnight. I mean, it can take years to prove yourself and earn the kind of reputation that will keep the work coming. And even then, factors totally under control, like the WGA strike we had a few years ago, can put you right back on unemployment with no idea when it's going to change. So don't live beyond your means. This is kind of basic, mom and pop canned advice, but that, and be ready for the bad times when work just isn't happening, because that happens to us all. I mean, there's been 3 or 4 times throughout my career where I was honestly thinking about maybe trying to find something else to do because things weren't happening. I couldn't predict when the next job would come. And at a certain point, financially and emotionally, it can kind of grind you down. You hit these low points. So you have to be ready to weather those. It's a roller coaster kind of life. And I guess the last thing I would say is have a good sense of humor. Develop a taste for irony and absurdity, because you're gonna run across so much of that in this business. If you can learn to feed off that and work with good people, you can still have a lot of fun, even though it's hard. It can be a lot of fun. It really can.
Yes, there are always good plus positive sides to everything. And like you said, you have to be able to roll with it and just go with the flow of what the business is going to hand you.
Absolutely. Make lemonade from the lemons,
Yes. And then add some vodka, right?
It's essential, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Michael, for sharing your expertise and your knowledge with us.
Well, thank you, and I want to thank the Anonymous Production System, because it's a great blog. It's a great site. It really performs a very valuable service, and I thoroughly enjoy reading it. I check it.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
For this week's Crew Call. Thanks again to Mike Taylor for telling us about life below the line. Tune in next week for Dolly Brooke Daryl Humber. Thanks for listening.